welcome to the Counterattack Playthrough Series. We're continuing with Next War Poland. The scenario is Suwalki Gap. It's turn 2 of 3. Let's get going. In the standard game sequence of play, the first phase is the weather phase, but in this scenario, the weather is fixed to clear for all 3 turns. So then we go to the supply phase. That's an optional rule that I'm playing with just to learn. I'm sure I screwed something up somewhere, but basically in the standard game it's fairly simplistic. Units have to be able to trace along a road a supply path to a supply source. Supply sources are friendly cities and urban areas, and you can trace off map to, for example, the Russians can trace off map to their city, a city in Kaliningrad. So looking at anyone that's out of supply, for the Russians first, so all these Russians are along a road. Now zone of control, for example, from the Poles, cancels supply tracing, except if there's a unit there, it doesn't affect supply. So a unit can cancel the zone of control essentially for supply purposes. So these Russians here are all on a road, and that road traces off to friendly territory. This Russian over here as well traces off to friendly territory up that road. These guys are not on a road. However, you may always trace supply from an adjacent road. And I think it may have been the Next War Korea rules said something like they'll always find a way to get supply if you're next to a road. So anyway, so those guys are in supply. Let's look at the allied units. So these guys are all on cities or able to trace a road to a city, so they're all in supply. And if I had read the supply rules ahead of time, I would have made a correction here or ordered these guys elsewhere. These guys are not in supply. They are next to a road, but there's an enemy zone of control projected into the road. And there's no other road down here. So even though they're only a couple hexes from Elk, they are out of supply from my reading of the rules. And what that's going to do is it's going to cut their combat and movement in half. Okay, let's go look in the Bialystok area. So it looks like a lot of roads coming off the map from Belarus. So these guys are good. This guy, he's on a road that doesn't trace off the map, but he's next to a road that does, and there's a friendly unit there. Bialystok is an urban area and a supply source, so the Polish units here, and I think there's an American unit here, yep, are in supply. The next phase is the initiative air naval phase, but this scenario is special and most of this stuff is set. So basically the Russians still have the initiative. Normally you would go in and see if the initiative has changed or if it's been contested. Also you get more air points. Since this is a standard game, we use air points instead of actual aircraft units. The non-allied player, instead of getting 4 like the first turn, they only get 3, so it sounds like their air capacity is dwindling a little. NATO's still stuck at 2. And then the rest of the stuff here doesn't matter. The next phase is the initiative, movement, and combat phase, because one player has the initiative. That's the non-allied player, the Russians and the Belarusians. The first segment is the initiative movement segment, where they can move any and all units any way they see fit. So we're looking down at the Bialystok front, and I think I do want to move 1 unit anyway. I'm looking at 6th west here. I think it's going to go 0.5, because that's what the road cost is. I don't have to pay 1 for a zone of control because there's a unit covering its exit from the zone of control. And then I'm going to pay 2 for a total of 2.5 to get over here adjacent to Bialystok. 2 because it's flat, it costs 1, and it costs 1 to enter a zone of control. And it also must stop since it's a zone of control that it's entered. But my reasoning for doing this is I already have 3 or 4 units to get like the die roll bonus for having 3 or 4 attacking from 3 or 4 hexes, but I want to try to cut off any retreats. If I get a lucky roll and these guys have to retreat, they'll have to retreat through the zone of control of this guy. Now up on the Russian front, well, the pain's coming for NATO. I think we'll have 79th Guards. They're gonna move down onto this rough terrain along with their buddies there. I think 20th, the 9th of the 20th guards move down here. Enters the zone of control, so must stop. I think these guys, they can go from zone of control to zone of control, provided they spend their entire movement allotment. And all these guys are mech movement. Mech movement into flat woods costs 2. It's going to go 2 and then must stop. And then what was the situation here? Yeah, so as you can see, there's a large force poised to strike here. This guy's stuck behind, or another zone controls projected behind him. Yeah, it's going to be brutal. Now it's the initiative combat segment. So let's do some combat. Let's select our first combat. We'll go ahead and do the biggie right here. Okay, here are all the ground units spread out so we can see what's going on. I think we're going to pick this unit. No, we'll pick this unit here, first guards, as the lead unit for the Russians. So it has an efficiency of 6. The Poles here with an efficiency of 5 will be their lead unit. The Russians will allocate artillery. They will also allocate 1 air point, so we'll represent that with a strike marker. They have a total of 3 air points available, so they're just doing 1. They're also going to allocate both of their helicopters that are off map, so these guys here, so it's going to be 3 more points here. And then the Allies, I think they're going to use their one of their 2 air points. Yeah, just one of them. So there's a strike representing that. And then the Polish Mi-24 helicopter off the boundary here will contribute 1 strength point as well. By the way, in the first video for this scenario, I said, hey, I wish they had more of these markers. I only have 2. Well, I found the other 2, thankfully, on a counter sheet that was like errata counters and extra counters for the other Next War products that came with this game, and I just sort of missed, like, these were lumped in with it. So anyway, let's go ahead and process air defense fire for these helicopters and air points. The modifiers for all these will be -1 since the target hex contains mech units, and there are also mech units adjacent to it, so -1 for both sides. So let's go ahead and do the air point. The Russians do have air advantage still. No effect on the Russian air point. Now for the helo. Rolled an 8, no effect. Now for the 2 strength helo, rolled a 5, no effect. Now for the Allied air point, rolled a 1. That is abort -2. Well, it's only got 1, so and it also has an asterisk, which means there's a Allied air point permanently lost. So I'm marking that off to the side. And now for the helo, got a 6. That is abort -1, so no air support for the Allies. Now for the ground combat, looks like we are 6-to-1 odds, -4 die roll. Got a 4. That yields 1 attacker loss, 3 defender losses. Attacker lead unit takes the loss. And there's only 3 steps here, so all 3 are wiped out. There's this chance we will cut this short, but you know, we're gonna play it out, see how it goes. Okay, for advance after combat, at least 1 unit must advance. And I think I want to advance with mech units because they can make a second advance. This terrain does not prevent second advance, and you can only do that when the defender retreated 2 hexes or was eliminated. So, well, 2 stacking points. Oh, serious, 4 stacking points. I suppose I want to try to get these guys in a position to maybe attack down here in Augusto. So, yeah, so here's 1 stacking point, and you ignore zones of control. So there's a total of 3 stacking points moving through there. And then, hey, why not? There's 1 more mechanized guy. Because this guy can like roll through here, but maybe we'll just go like this. Just stack right on there. All right, let's tidy this up. All right, that was devastating, and since it went so well for the Russians, I think they're also going to attack over here against this out-of-supply Polish unit. Let's go in a little closer. Okay, let's check out the initial combat odds. We got 5 attacking against 2 defending. This guy's out of supply, which halves its attack strength and its movement, but not its defense strength. It also lowers its efficiency rating. Okay, the lead unit for the Russians is going to be this 6 efficiency motorized infantry brigade. And of course, this is the lead unit for the Poles. Since they're out of supply, their efficiency is 3, so that's 6 minus 3. That's a plus 3 column shift that takes us up to the 5 to 1 column. Man. And then the die rolls are modifiers are just the remainder in the odds calculation. So that's a -1. Let's go ahead and roll. Russians are unlucky. A 9 -1 on that odds column though is still a 1 attacker loss, 1 defender loss with a retreat. The attacker loss, of course, must come from the lead unit. The defender loss, well, there's completely wiped out. And then at least 1 attacker must advance. I think we'll advance both of them just to keep their combat defense strength stacked together. They are not mechanized or armored, so they can't do a double advance. Okay, now for Bialystok. All these guys are going to attack Bialystok. They have an attack strength total of 10. The defenders have an attack strength total of 10 as well. The defense is 3 plus 2 is 5, doubled because they're both light infantry in an urban area. The Belarusians are going to use both of their rocket artillery assets to add to the battle. They're also going to use 1 sortie of their Mi-24, so we'll throw in some combat support there. The Americans have a damaged Apache unit out here, so they'll use 1 sortie of that. Air points, let's see. I think the Americans are going to provide NATO. They're going to supply their last point of air support. The non-allies, they still have 2 points left. You know what? They're going to throw all 2 points in, so no one has any air support left. So go ahead and mark that. Let's go ahead and process air defense fire. Okay, let's process the NATO air defense fire against the non-allied player. We'll start with the 2 air points. It's a -1 die roll because there's adjacent mech. Is that true? Oh no, it's not. There's no NATO mech in here. Ooh, that's bad. The Polish recon used to be here last turn, and that provided a -1, but there's no -1. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll. We rolled a 5, and that is nothing. Okay, now for the helo, rolled a 1. That is a abort, so the helo had to return to base. Now for the non-allied player attacking the air point of NATO. It is -1 because there's plenty of mech around here. We rolled a 4, which drops us down 1, but it's still an abort. So the air point had to turn around, and now for the helo, again a -1. I rolled a 5. That drops us to the 4 row, and that too is an abort. So, yep, all we have is 2 air points of air support for the non-allied player. Okay, now for the ground combat, I think the Poles Yeah, the Poles will be the lead unit because the Americans are already damaged. So there'll be a 6. And then how about the green unit here? It will be the lead unit. So that's a 1 advantage for the defenders. We're going to have combat shifts of 1 to the left for that differential, 2 to the right for artillery for a net of 1. Then die roll modifiers, there's 3 or 4 hexes, so that's a -1 for the Belarusians. There's light infantry defense, so that's +1. There's more than 1 formation, so there's 1 extra formation, that's a +1. And then there's 2 air points, -2 for a net of -1. So that was 1 shift right, -1. Let's go ahead and roll. Got a 0. 0 -1, that's a 1/1R. So 1 loss for both sides, and the defender has to retreat 1. Rather, the defender is potentially going to retreat. So let's go ahead and take a loss for each of the lead units. And now we need to do a retreat. So clearly we don't want to retreat. So we're going to have to use the lowest efficiency value to try to avoid retreating. We're going to do an efficiency check. I need to roll a 5 or less to avoid retreating. Oh man, got an 8. So now we can choose to take a loss to stay in place, or we have to retreat. We're going to be retreating through an enemy zone of control, which we can potentially take more losses. So I have to decide, are the Polish 6 Airborne going to sacrifice themselves to hold on to Bialystok? Man, let's take a quick look at these Americans again. Yeah, I mean, they're just a little bit better based on their efficiency rating. I think we're going to have to delay this fall of Bialystok by sacrificing the 6 Airborne. I think the Poles would do that. Okay. Man, that's rough. Okay, that ends the initiative combat segment. Now the elite reaction movement segment. Just a refresher, any non-initiative units that's allied that are elite, that means their efficiency 6, 7, or 8, may move, but they only if they're not in an enemy zone of control. These guys are technically not in an enemy zone of control, but they don't want to move because urban areas cancel zone of control. Let's go visit the north. So everyone but the Canadians here are in an enemy zone of control, and I think the Canadians want to stay in Elk. So yeah, that segment is over. Now for the exploitation movement segment, that's where the initiative player can move units that are not in an enemy zone of control, so similar to the elite reaction movement, but it's any units up to their full movement allowance. And we do have a few of those. For example, this guy, he's across from these poles. There's a lake in between them. So I think he's just going to shift over here, help out there. And then these guys here, they might be able to come down and help too. Let's see here. I might want to keep one in Suwalki just to keep a hold on it there. And maybe this guy will come down and join his friend here. Not necessarily going to do anything with them just yet. And then maybe these guys here, they'll come down to here. They'll threaten the Canadians as well as the Belgians. Okay, now it's the exploitation combat segment. And just a reminder, exploitation combat, the attacker suffers a -2 column shift penalty. So you don't want to use it everywhere. But I think the Russians have some momentum here. And they're going to attack these Polish units at Augusto. Okay, and I think they'll go ahead and throw in all of their helicopter support. So these guys here. And this artillery support, which still is in range. The Poles will send in their Mi-24. And that's about all the support they can muster. So let's go in a little closer and spread things out. Okay, here we see everyone here. First, air defense fire. There is mech in the target hex here, and as well as mech adjacent to it from the Russians. So both sides are going to get a -1. Let's go ahead and do the air defense fire against this Russian helicopter first. The Russians have air advantage, as we recall. Rolled a 6 -1, that's no effect. Now for the other one. Rolled a 9 -1, no effect. Okay, now for the Allied Polish helicopter. Rolled a 2 -1. That's a -1 with a step loss. The Polish helicopter unit is destroyed and cannot provide support. Okay, the lead units will do this top recon unit of 6. The air cav here, 6 as well, so those cancel each other out. We got 20 to 5 odds, that's 4 to 1. Odds are reduced by -2 city, -2 exploitation, +1 for the artillery, so it's going to be a -3 shift. -3 shift takes us from the 4 to 1 column to the 1.5 to 1 column. Die roll modifiers are going to be -2 for the Russians helicopters, +1 for light infantry defending in a city. Yeah, so that'll be a net of -1. There's only one formation attacking. The white units, of course, don't count as formations. So yeah, let's go ahead and roll this puppy. Rolled a 5. 5 -1 takes us to 1 attacker loss, 1 defender loss, and a retreat. Of course, the losses must come from these lead units. And then we're going to try to avoid retreating. The worst efficiency value, there's a 4. Let's see what we can do here. Rolled a 6, so they're going to have to retreat. However, I think the Poles are going to sacrifice a unit to prevent this city from falling. I mean, I think the Russians would pretty much be guaranteed the win if that city falls. So we'll see if we can hold it. Okay, let's tidy this up. There we go. Russians can't do anything else, but I think it's safe to say this city's going down. Now for other potential attack areas, for example, attacking the Belgians here or attacking down in Bialystok, I feel like that -2 column shift is just too much to risk. Like if the Belarusians lose one more unit, it's going to be, much more tougher. One more step, I should say. It's going to be a lot tougher to maintain their attack there. So they'll wait for the regular old combat phase where they don't have the -2. Okay, so now we're in the reaction movement segment. That's where the non-initiative player, the NATO allies, can move all their units. Now, they're just stuck. I mean, I know where this is going. So these guys, they're inside zones of control. I mean, the urban area protects them, but they can't really move. I mean, if they move, they'll give up the victory location. These guys, they have to hold that city. The Belgians have to hold that city. The Canadians, they have to hold that city. They could try to get over to Augusto, but man, I think everyone's just going to end up dying in this pretty soon here. So yeah, so there's going to be no reaction movement. Reaction combat. I really see no opportunities. Like, if the die roll goes bad, it will be really bad. So I think the allies are just going to have to sit tight. And that ends the initiative movement and combat phase. Okay, basic movement and combat phase. The first segment is the first movement segment. So let's get these Russians moving. So this is a motorized unit. Yeah, they're going in for the kill now before the more NATO reinforcements come. So 1, 2, 3 motorized into ref costs 2. One more to because it's entering a zone of control there. Let's see. I think this guy will break out of here. So 1, 2, 3. Trying to get some bonus die roll situations. Yeah, we're gonna go for the kill. This guy's gonna slide right over here. I think this guy, he might break out. You know, I can ignore the zone of control because he's stacked with friendlies, and then come in right over here. And then this guy will come over here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. And then the Belarusians way down south are not going to move. Okay, the first battle is going to be the battle for Augusto again. Looks like we have 18 to 2 combat odds. It's 9 to 1 on the Flatwoods row that maxes at 6 to 1. So we start the odds from 6 to 1. Column shifts. Well, let's see for efficiency. I think we're going to, yeah, we'll choose this guy as the lead unit, and then this guy, of course, is the only unit there. So that'll be -1 efficiency shift, -2 for attacking a city. That brings us down to 3 to 1. There's a light infantry defending in a city, so that's +1 to the die roll. There's 3 or 4 hexes to get the -1. 3 to, if there's 3 or 4 attacker hexes, there's a -1. So then that's out to 0. Let's figure out. I think I got everything there. So let's roll the die. We rolled a 0. 0 is 1 attacker loss, 3 defender losses, and a retreat. So clearly the air cav is obliterated. And then this unit is damaged. So now advancing, I think just this lead unit will, maybe this guy too. These 2 guys will advance into the city and take it. But the act of taking it might be prolonged. I'm going to randomly draw a clearing marker, and we'll keep it secret until it's time to figure out figure this out during the clearing operations phase. In fact, maybe I need some more steps in here. I think everyone's going to pile in and overstack. I want to clear Augusto fast. You know, looking at my notes for this battle, I think I screwed up twice. Screw up number 1 was I did a -1 column shift for the Russians having better efficiency. Should have been a +1. I keep thinking negative values are good, which is true in the die roll case, but it's not true in the combat shift. So yeah, I made it harder on the Russians. Now they still won. But then I also made it easier on the Russians because when I looked at the die roll, I subtracted 1 for them attacking from 3 or 4 hexes, and I forgot that the defending light infantry adds 1, should have netted at 0. I'm just going to let it roll. It's not that big of a difference. So let's go see what the next battle is. The next battle, we're attacking Elk with everything we got. We just want to, and these aren't like great attacks, but I just want to see if I can knock these guys out. I can get 4 units into Elk to try to clear if I get a good roll. So attacking a city is -2. The efficiency rating differential. Well, the Canadians, of course, will be 6. And then I suppose we'll use this recon unit for 5. So that will be a -1, correctly a -1. So it's going to be -3 shifts. The combat odds, they're 9 to 2. Because of city, you know, cities are good because they cancel out mech bonuses. So it could have been a little more if it was in the clear or something. But so 9 to 2 is 4 to 1 odds. And then we shifted 3 down to, looks like the 1.5 odds column. And then there was a remainder in the odds calculation. So the die roll modifier will be -1. Attacking from 3 or 4 hexes, -1. +1 light infantry for a net of -1. So I'm going to roll the die and I'm going to subtract 1. Let's see what we get. 3 -1, that's 2. 1 attacker loss and a retreat. Do the Canadians have a step on the back? They do not. Wow. All right. Everyone's advancing into an overstacked situation. I'm cool with that. Let's go ahead and randomly draw a clearing operation. Bam. Okay, second movement segment of the basic movement in combat phase. The non-initiative player gets to move. Now, unfortunately, the 82nd Airborne unit down here, it's surrounded by zones of control. They do project out to here. but there aren't any projecting into here. But still, I don't think it wants to move. It's going to try to hold on. But let's go check out the only other NATO unit on the board. These are the Belgians, and they theoretically could move. No, they have zones of control all around them. I mean, you can go from one zone of control to the other, but I don't think there's much they can do, and they're holding Aleppo, which is a victory point city, so I think they're just going to stay there too. That means we're going to go into the second combat segment where these units could fight. I don't think it makes any sense to do that. Even this guy attacking here, which is a slightly better than 1-to-1, you know, it's quite possible the end result will be less than that, but I think they just need to hold on. So now we start the reorganization phase. All helicopters and artillery reset, and air mobile points reset, and then we conduct clearing operations. So maybe we'll go start with Augusto. Here we are. Let's see what we have. Okay, here we see the clearing marker is 4, and some other interesting info. We have infantry and armor, and we have 5 stacking points. The minimum safe stacking points for a city is 3. So we're going to roll a die. We have to roll greater than 4, and our die roll modifiers are +1 for the combined arms of infantry plus armor, and then +2 for our lead unit, 6 here, -4, so that's a +2. And if we didn't have the minimum safe stacking points, there'd be a negative, but we're good. So that's going to be a total of +3. Let's go ahead and roll that puppy. Well, that's a 0. +3 is 3. 3 is not greater than 4, so they fail. And but they do have the minimum safe stacking points. They have 5 stacking points versus the minimum safe is 3, so the lead unit does not take a loss. However, they are still clearing. Let's go over to Elk now. Okay, here we are. Let's check out what's under here. Okay, this is a city again, so the minimum safe stacking points are 3. We meet the minimum. We have 7 stacking points. We're going to go in with maybe this infantry here, so that's a lead unit, 5 efficiency rating, 5 - 3 is a +2. We've combined arms, so there's mechanized armor and infantry, so that's a +1. So it's again another +3. Go ahead and roll. We need more than 3 because of the strength of the clearing number. So we got an 8. So that's more than enough to clear. So the Russians are going to get 2 more points. So that's currently 4-8, I believe. But as soon as Augusto falls off to the side over there, it'll be 6-6. So Russians are pretty much going to win this. But here, let me tidy this up. Okay, now for the reinforcement and replacement phase. And both sides get their reinforcements first. The non-allied player doesn't get any, but the allied player gets a decent amount. So 3 air mobile and airborne forces, which they're all air mobile, and a Polish recon unit. I think we might be able to do something here due to a blunder by the Russians. Okay, first to take advantage of the Russian blunder. I think this Netherlands unit is going to air mobile in. They're not allowed to land in an enemy zone of control per the scenario rules, but we are supposed to follow air landing rules for reinforcements that are air mobile capable. And then the rules say if you land adjacent to an enemy controlled but unoccupied city, you may advance. It's a little odd that you can't do that for a friendly controlled city, but whatever. So that's the blunder. The allies were able to take 2 points back immediately, and Suwalki, even if it falls, is going to have to be cleared again. Now, by a strict reading of the rules, I can't get another unit in there as far as I understand them. For example, these Italians, They could land here, but they won't be able to advance because it's now a friendly occupied city. I kind of feel that the spirit of the rule is not covered by that. I feel like, yeah, they should be able to advance too. It's even easier, but I'm going to have to play rules as written, so these Italians are going to go somewhere else. Not really sure if I want anyone else up here. These 2 units are in supply because cities provide supply using the optional basic game supply rules. So maybe the rest of the units, they're going to go down and try to hold Bialystok because that's worth 4 points. Bialystok is an urban area, so it doesn't have a zone of control, which means we can air mobile right in, unlike the cities which had zones of control in them. So that's pretty good force there, and I would say unlikely that this dwindling force here can knock them out. But, you know, what are our stacking points here? We got 2. Yeah, let's send the Italians in with the Americans. There we go. And then our last unit is the Polish recon unit. And the rules say it comes in on the roads along the west. So I can pick a road. I think this is actually a strong enough force we can start trying to pick off some of the weaker Belarusian units. Maybe we'll just put them up here though. All right. Okay, replacements. The Russians have 0 replacement points, and then they gain 2 this turn. And that's just enough to reconstitute an armored brigade for the X there. Step. It has to be placed in a friendly town, city, or allied town, city, or so on. This is Russian territory here, so we'll go ahead and reconstitute that there. The Belarusians, they have 1 replacement step, and they gain 1 more this turn. Unfortunately, all their damage units are in a zone of control, so they cannot receive the replacements, so they'll just have to save that. The Americans, they had 1 replacement point and they gain 2 this turn. And so they can reconstitute this regiment. That's all they have, really. They have a destroyed airborne, air mobile type unit, but you can't actually reconstitute those. You can only repair them. So we'll go ahead and reconstitute it here in a friendly town. It's actually worth like half a point. Yeah, and that means I have to spend a whole point for it though, but and then that means I have 2 points left, which I think I can use to replace this airborne unit here. It's not in a zone of control, and that's the only rule here, that I don't have to like trace like a ground supply or anything. So okay, so the Americans are down to 1. The Poles had 1 replacement point, and they get 1 more this turn, which is enough to reconstitute a mechanized infantry brigade. We'll go ahead and stack them with the Americans in this town here. So let's see, the Americans are at 1, the Poles are at 0, the Russians are at 0, the Belarusians are remaining at 2 because they couldn't spend them, and that leaves NATO. They have 1 replacement point, they gain 1 more to 2. The only destroyed NATO units, there's a Canadian battalion, I think that's right, battalion, and then a French airborne unit, so I can't reconstitute airborne units, so we're going to waste 1 point to bring in this like little tiny Canadian unit. And I think we'll go ahead and bring them in. Yeah, maybe we'll just throw them here. Well, I'll stack them with the Poles there. Okay, we actually have a decent force building up there. Now it's the victory determination phase, and we don't really do that in this scenario, but just a quick check. There's only 1 city controlled by the non-allied player, that's Elk, so that's 2 points for them, and that leaves 2, 4, 6, 8, I think. 8 points for the allies, though Augusto is about to fall. And then, you know, I'm sure something else will fall too, but okay. Finally, the game record phase. So we're going to move the game turn to turn 3. Now this is a 3-turn scenario, but it's taken me forever to get this thing filmed, this second turn. So I think I'm going to call it here. It actually, I thought it was lopsided towards the non-allied side, but you know, the NATO gets some decent reinforcements, and plus that one blunder where I allowed Suwalki to fall. If I was an experienced player, I would have left troops there and they wouldn't be able to retake. But yeah, so I'm going to call this here. So we're going to end it at turn 2 and to say it was probably going to be a draw. But hopefully this gave a good idea for the basic game. I don't know if I'll be able to play the advanced game on camera. It's tough to film. It takes up a lot of space. Also, you may have noticed I've been putting charts up showing sort of the combat results table, air defense fire, and so on. Let me know if you like that or if you think it's distracting or dumb. So anyway, I don't know when my next video will be, but I'm planning on Sword of Rome by request. So keep an eye out for that in the coming months. Catch you later.